going to need to defer that to another meeting. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Madam Chairman, may I speak to that for a moment?
Sure.
I would like to suggest that in council's review of that, they let know that I think that this identification agreement needs to be explored as to where it's going to go, who's going to have to sign it. It should be more expansive than just use sports groups. And I think that I would also stress the fact that I consider the youth sports groups to be a part of a public-private partnership, and I think the city should address these sports groups just in that capacity, because without these sports groups, the city would have to be performing the same functions that these volunteer nonprofit organizations are having to perform. And I would like to address one part of that, and speaking specifically the expanded nature of this arms agreement, I think goes into areas that could essentially bankrupt a nonprofit if there were litigation in a certain area. And I'll be happy to talk and take off the record about that, so that when they're looking at it, that they can take that into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none. It's time for public requests, and Executive Director Harms has the floor.
Okay, we have two public requests. The first one, Dear Board of Commissioners, this is from the Soccer Association of Boca Raton. Dear Board of Commissioners, this letter is written on behalf of the Soccer Association of Boca Raton, Inc., with SABRE, with regard to proposed indemnification release and hold harmless agreement IA, under consideration by the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District, referred to as the BPD. Requiring SABRE to enter into this indemnification agreement raises grave concerns regarding SABRE's continued ability to offer community and volunteer-based organized soccer sports programs and events. For decades, SABRE has served thousands of families, children, parents, and grandparents seeking to make full use of the recreational facilities available in our area. In so doing, SABRE has fostered a public-private partnership with the BPD, the City of Boca Raton, the School Board of Palm Beach County, and other organizations. SABRE seeks to maintain this important community public-private partnership now and in the future. By way of background, on May 18, 2020, the BPD voted to enter into a new facilities use agreement for organizations and individuals outside the university, known as the FAU Agreement, with Florida Atlantic University concerning the so-called Blade soccer fields located on FAU's Boca Raton campus. On behalf of SABRE, I provided remarks during public requests in support of the FAU Agreement. However, at the same meeting, Commissioner Ernst announced concerns regarding BPD's liability under the FAU Agreement. As a result, even though the FAU Agreement was essentially a renewal of a long-standing agreement between FAU and the BPD Commission voted to develop an indemnification agreement between BPD and users of the FAU facilities. SABRE, over 4 decades serving our community. As many of you may be aware, since 1977, SABRE, as a nonprofit organization, provides much-needed soccer-based recreational programs to the greater Boca Raton community. Having grown into one of the largest soccer clubs in Florida, SABRE organizes and manages a variety of programs so players at all skill levels have an opportunity to play the game at the level that best suits each individual. Further, SABRE strives to maximize the development of each player within each of its programs. This includes programs for youth, adults, and those in our community with disabilities. Among other things, BPD's mission is to provide athletic and recreational activities to the very same residents served by SABRE. This represents the essence of SABRE's public-private partnership with the BPD. SABRE's concerns with the indemnification agreement. First and foremost, for decades, SABRE has managed its events for the benefit and safety of the participants. SABRE programs and activities have always been carried out in a careful and safe manner. Nothing in the IA addresses anything related to the safety or welfare of participants or residents of the BPD. Instead, the IA is focused on some potential, undefined legal liability that could theoretically accrue to the BPD through the use of the facilities outlined in the FAU agreement. A review of the public record does not reflect any thoughtful discussion regarding if, how, or why the BPD is lacking legal liability protections, nor is there any indication of why, at this point in time, renewal of the FAU agreement raises new and different issues never contemplated in the past. Therefore, it appears that the IA is nothing more than a solution in search of a problem. Assuming there is a demonstrated legal or policy-based need for the IA, which is currently proposed by the BPD, goes well beyond the 4 corners of the FAU agreement. Importantly, the stated need for the proposed IA is the entry into the new FAU agreement. Simply stated, a cursory review of the FAU agreement reflects that it is limited to the negligence of user or user's employees. In fact, The FAU agreement explicitly provides that nothing therein is intended to indemnify FAU from any liability or claim arising out of the negligent performance or failure of performance of FAU, or as a result of the negligence or failure of performance of any third party. Here, the BPD-IA is attempting to do the opposite by requiring SABRE to release, indemnify, and hold harmless the BPD arising from or related to any and all activities or events without limitation conducted or performed by SABRE at the FAU facilities. SABRE is further required at its own expense to appear, defend, and pay all charges for attorneys chosen by the BPD for defense of the claims, and all costs and other expenses arising against the BPD in any such action. The IA does not stop there. The IA goes on to state that the BPD has the explicit right to sue SABRE for specific performance of its release, indemnification, and hold harmless obligations under the IA, and be able to obtain attorney's fees against SABRE if it is the prevailing party. The IA makes no mention of the fact that BPD enjoys sovereign immunity pursuant to Section 768.28 of the Florida statutes. In conclusion, the IA places SABRE in an untenable, unreasonable, and unnecessary position. The IA does not reflect the long-standing public-private partnership that has benefited Greater Boca Raton community over several decades. Moreover, we believe the BPD should be actively fostering and supporting SABRE's programs, not erecting obstacles. There should be no dispute that these programs provide a valuable and needed public service to the residents of the Greater Boca Raton area, and that these SABRE programs are consistent with and in furtherance of the BPD's statutory defined mission, notwithstanding that the IA creates obstacles and seemingly reflects an attempt by some to shift significant burdens and responsibilities onto a not-for-profit community organization. As such, our Board of Directors holds that the IA should be categorically rejected by the BPD Commissioners. Sincerely, Earl Stockoff, President. And another one from Raul Travieso, for pickleball. Commissioners, I am Raul Travieso, 1037 West Royal Palm Road, President of Boca Raton Pickleball Club, Inc., and recently appointed by the USA Pickleball Association as the Southeast Florida District Ambassador. I wish to take this opportunity to request consideration by the district, in coordination with the city, to provide additional dedicated and lighted pickleball courts in order to meet the increased demand by our residents. Our club members and other residents are extremely grateful for the 4 courts at the El Rio Park. The courts are extremely busy during daytime hours as well as the early evening hours. Often there are over 30 players sharing playing time on those 4 courts. I've posted numerous pictures in our Greater Boca Raton Pickleball Facebook page to document the large crowds at the courts. Pickleball is no longer a retiree sport as young players are now emerging. 2 years ago, I chaired a Train the Trainer program with volunteers to teach over 80 Palm Beach County physical education teachers how to play the game. As a result, pickleball is being taught at the elementary, middle, and high schools throughout the county. Gated communities throughout Boca have pickleball complexes for their residents, and yet the rest of the citizens only have 4 daytime unlit courts to share. The county has converted 2 underutilized tennis courts to 6 pickleball courts at Okehili, Lake Lytle, John Prince Park, and 6 new courts are budgeted for next fiscal year at South County Park. A point of fact, many regional private communities advertise pickleball as their #1 amenity. We believe the district and the city should get in front of this ever-increasing demand for dedicated lighted pickleball courts. The 4 dedicated courts at El Rio are not enough to converting tennis courts at Patch Reef or the Swing and Racket Club would be the most economical and quick solution and would also provide revenue. Another possibility would be to build a pickleball complex at the Spanish River Athletic Park, and before the long-awaited golf course is developed, the abandoned tennis courts at Boca Chica could be resurfaced. Pickleball is a multi-generational lifetime sport, the game for everybody at every ability, and its growth is undeniable. Our group will be addressing the city at their next council workshop with the same request. We are available to discuss these issues further and to provide any additional assistance. Your attention and consideration of this matter will be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Raul Travieso.
Brianna, are there any calls?
If anybody wants to raise their hand. There is one person with their hand up. Just a minute.
I think I see Greg Gallant.
Yeah, there's 2. Greg and Earl.
Hi guys.
Greg.
Hi guys. Can you hear me?
Take your name and address.
Rebecca Land is 1780 Southwest 22nd Ave. Just a quick question. It came up at the last meeting. We had not got a response from the city on the request to go it alone with their design approval. If someone could provide an update on that, I would appreciate it.
I've called Mike Wika to find out if he wants to talk about it. I've not heard anything back on the emails that I sent before, and I have not gotten a response to the phone calls and voicemails.
Do we have any legal recourse, Jacob, on the timeline and what the city committed to doing here?
He's muted.
I'm sorry, may I respond, Madam Chair?
Please do, Jacob, thank you.
Thank you, to you, Mr. Gladys. The answer is that there are some options. I think that we've gone over the intergovernmental dispute process under Chapter 164, which requires both first we require this board to adopt a resolution initiating that process, followed by meetings between the executive director and the city manager, meetings between our council, our board, and the city council. The answer is there are some options. We require a little bit of further discussion and process from our perspective. We'll continue to work with Brianne and advise the board accordingly to the extent that that is appropriately headed. But again, I'm not quite convinced that we're there yet. I think it's a matter of waiting to hear back from the city and following up, given some of the circumstances that they've been dealing with and we've been dealing with.
Thank you, Jacob. My last comment here, guys, is time is not our friend. The closing of Boca Municipal is imminent in the near term, and I think it's incumbent on us to get a response one way or the other so we can decide legally how to proceed. Thank you for the update and appreciate any push that can be made on this. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Greg. I believe Mr. Starkov wanted to speak.
Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
You're unmuted, Earl, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Clearly, you can tell from our email and our correspondence with you that we're very concerned about this issue. I certainly appreciate that you've had a development today that you haven't had a chance to review, and certainly we haven't had a chance to review it. So I understand that you're going to move this to another time. But even before that, I really want to speak not to the hard answers that we put in our concerns, but rather that we really have been partners with the city for over 40 years and the district, that we value this collaborative community service with defined roles that have worked for all these years. In fact, predating Sabre and possibly the district, community youth sports groups have been in this community for at least 50 years. Pretty much operating, to the best of my knowledge, under the document. So, with the city, with the district, with Palm Beach County School Board, and FAU. And we want that to continue unabated.
You need to get rid of
So what we're requesting is that at your subsequent discussions, I heard the chair say that there hasn't been time to review this. And that's what I'm requesting as well. That if there's going to be new documentation, particularly if it's going to have a foundational change in the relationship of all sports groups and beyond sports groups, users at the park, there's no difference per se between a field trip supervised by teachers from Palm Beach County schools or a private school as there is a sports group that has adults supervising children. So that we'd like to have, if you feel that conversation is necessary, to us, a matter that should be resolved first between staff and elected officials of the four organizations that come to mind: the district, the city, FAU, and the Palm Beach County School Board. Then, and gather input from interested parties, fine, such as us. We would participate in that conversation, but until something is done on a 20,000-foot strategic view, so that there's one fair process apply to all users with responsibilities the same for all users, as well as the governmental authorities that provide the security to these facilities. We noted in our correspondence, there's nothing about the shift of liability that does anything to truly protect the public safety. So if there's going to be an all-encompassing process, please let's take the time. Everything's worked for 50 years. There's nothing imminent. There's no immediate dangers that fall outside of government guidelines, including the restart that the governor has allowed. We expect that the governor is going to allow Palm Beach County to enter phase 2. We've had a very active role and a great role with Mr. Calvert's team over at athletics to be prepared for these with proper safeguards. And we'd like to get our players, our children, our adults, we have at least 1,000 of them that are ready to get back on the fields any day. And certainly we wouldn't want anything as cooped up as everybody has been to interfere with that. So if there's something that needs to be conveyed to the city or your other partners, we hope that you'll address our concerns even this evening to hopefully take our request that things stay in place until a long review and greater study can be done. So this is done in an all-encompassing community partnership manner. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starbuck. We appreciate your input. Is there anyone else, Brianne, who would like to speak?
Let me just double check. You see anything? Nope. No, nobody else.
Okay, at this time,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I'm sorry, this is John from Narrow.
Hi, John.
Hi there.
I saw you briefly on the screen there.
Yes, ma'am.
Give your name and your address for us, please, John.
Yes, ma'am. My name is John from Narrow. I'm here as legal counsel to Sabre. I'm at 6727 Royal Orchid Circle. I appreciate the opportunity to address the commission.
Please do, right now.
Okay.
Public request, this is the perfect time. You've got 3 minutes, John. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'll try to beat that. You've seen, I'm sure by now, the letter from Sabre. To put it simply, in very complex legal terms, this is a pretty big deal having to do with the indemnification and home harmless agreement. It has really system-wide implications to, I think, every single user group and or Sabre, certainly the community services that Sabre provides. I think most of us can agree that the relationship with Sabre over the
You scroll through. I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. At this time, public requests are now closed. It's time to approve the minutes of the regular virtual meeting that was held on May 18th, 2020. I hear a motion.
So moved.
Thank you for the second, Mrs. Wright. Is there any conversation, anything that you need to discuss? Hearing none, Joanne, would you please do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Hunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Mullins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. It is now time for our regular business. We move to the CIP timeline and costs, started on page 14. Brianne, would you like to start the conversation, please?
Sure, I can certainly start the conversation. At the last meeting, Melissa was directed to put together more of a timeline along with costs of some of the expected projects that we have going on. I think our focus needs to be on next year because that's the budget that we will be approving first. So in 2021, the list totals about 2.3 and that's where we were. I talked to the chair already because we were working on the agenda for our next meeting, and what I'd like to do, we still have not gotten a budget from the city. We don't anticipate having it before our next meeting. We should have it for our first meeting in July. However, we're also going to be required to set our tentative millage and first public hearing date by July 20th. So it doesn't give us a whole lot of opportunity to start talking about the budget. So what I want to do at the next meeting is have an initial conversation and put together some budgets with numbers that we had originally thought for the city and show the rollback at the current rates and put that out there with the CIP. As far as these projects go in this list, this is projects that Melissa has identified as priority projects for district facilities that we would run, as well as city projects that they had in their budget last year for this upcoming fiscal year. Those things could change. We don't know because we have not had an opportunity to review their budget. But we can certainly get into a discussion, answer questions. Melissa's obviously here to answer any of those questions about the projects, but I think the focus right now should be on next fiscal year and what we will work on. And I think we can get into a more detailed discussion next week on Monday when we have a preliminary budget in front of us.
Thank you, Brianne. Commissioners, I'd like to hear from you that the numbers and the projects are found on page 16 of your agenda packet, but is there anything else you'd like to see added, subtracted, or do you have questions for Melissa? We'll start with you, Commissioner Engel.
You always start with.
Well, you're in the upper left-hand corner of my screen.
That's fine, that's fine. But I'm just looking through this. I don't see anything for golf course.
That will be a separate line item in our budget. Originally, we had set aside $5 million for next fiscal year. I think that we will still be looking at that same availability of number. Now, if that's what we want to devote to golf, that's a conversation that we'll have to have as we start setting our budget. These are just the projects on our current facilities and things that we had already approved moving forward with. The tower, the Gumbo Limbo Tower is another one that's a separate line item because we have it as a separate line in our budget. So that's not included. And I'll have a little update on that in my comment.
Okay. I think that was my only concern. I did talk to you about Ocean Strand.
Yes.
And I just wanted for the record to go through the timeline with you. We're going to talk about it on Monday with a view towards putting out an RFP, and we should have an RFP back by July. Am I correct? Or an RFP out?
We would put it out in July. We would need about 45 days or so to get things back if that's the direction that everybody chose to go, based on just a very basic phase one of a pedestrian style park at Ocean Strand. And so the goal, I think originally we had talked before this pandemic hit, was to get it open by September. we were obviously significantly impacted with how we could meet and look at facilities and continue working with city staff on it. So that did set us back some, but I think the goal would be to have it open by the end of this year, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to see it open, if at all possible. Maybe set a goal of, before Thanksgiving.
Jacob has something.
Jacob,
Jacob, did you have something?
you're on mute.
I do not have anything, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
There is still a lot of concern in the community about commercial interests getting involved in Ocean Stream. And I think the best way to put that to rest once and for all is to start on the development and get that done as fast as humanly possible.
I'm ready for it.
Can we put out an RFP for a design build for that
For those elements?
area?
Yes, yeah, so we were gonna have this as an agenda topic at the next meeting as Ocean Strand, because the idea was a pedestrian-based park and very minimal. There would be no parking, it would just be adding a pedestrian gate, some walkways, no restrooms, some tables and benches, and just get it open for phase one. And then we could look at in future years, adding to it or continuing to develop it, but that would be the initial, design build, yes. And you guys set aside 75,000, which I think would be sufficient to cover those things.
And what's the 100,000 for?
That was just set aside for next fiscal, because we had talked about phasing it in, so we just didn't know if you wanted to continue carrying a line item for that development.
And then, right, for the following year.
Mhm.
Can we make sure to put it, do we have to talk about it next time, or can we just direct you to do an RFP for it now?
Jacob, do we need to have that as an agenda topic?
It should be a line item on the agenda, given the nature of that particular discussion. I would add it to the next agenda, and that's the direction to the executive director, and make sure.
Could Could I start writing it and then they could review it at the next meeting to approve it?
Yes, that's an option.
Okay.
But the board to approve that RFP or RFQ.
They would have to approve it at the next meeting, but they could give me direction tonight to start writing it for Monday.
Yes.
Do we need a motion for that, Jake?
If there's consensus, I think the executive director can take that consensus.
I'd like to make a motion, yeah, make a motion to direct Brianne to, start to write, to write the RFP for the design build for Ocean Strand development, including, when we talk about walkways, I would much prefer pervious walkways, not concrete. It just increases the heat island effect and doesn't let water run and all that kind of stuff. So, and also as Florida-friendly landscaping as much as possible, and then removing all the invasives, obviously.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Joanne, did you get that? Mrs. Wright did the motion and Mr. Engel seconded.
And not to exceed $75,000.
And tables and benches, elements, whatever park elements they want to put in there.
Yeah, that they can come up with, yeah.
Is there any more discussion about having Brianne write up the RFP? Hearing none. Joanne, would you
Solar shades.
Solar
Are
shades.
we gonna do solar shades? That'd be a good place to put it in.
There's a lot of canopy over there. I don't know if we'll be able to make it happen,
Oh,
but
that's true, yeah.
Speak away.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you.
Yes. Dan, you have your work cut out for you for Monday.
gotta get busy.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Engel?
That is, insofar as the CIP schedule is concerned, that's all I have.
Okay. Mrs. Wright?
The miscellaneous roof projects, is that going to limbo roof?
Melissa's gonna talk to you on that. That was a separate one for this year, but next year is different.
Melissa?
Yeah, sorry, I have to unmute.
I'll just mute myself.
Yeah, the miscellaneous roofs projects, I sent an email out with you guys, Aaron, to you guys also listing which roofs those were by year. What it was is the city's, Wayne Anderson with the city did a roof inspection of all the roofs, and basically it is for a preventative maintenance routine for the roofs. As the roofs have gotten older, roofs have a general lifespan, generally speaking, of anywhere from 25 to 30 years, and we have a number of buildings that are reaching those year milestones. And some of those, although they do not have continuous leaks, have had leaks, and we've gone and successfully repaired them. But this is just a preventative maintenance program for slowly addressing the reefs throughout the parks that are either on parks that we own and or fund. And it was a plan put together by Municipal Services. So this particular one for the miscellaneous roofs, let's see, I have the information here, which roofs that addresses.
Just send it again.
I'll send it again.
Just send it again.
Yeah, I'll send it to you, again, Aaron. That includes the Sugar Sam Park Fieldhouse, the Sugar Sam Park, let me find the priorities page, make sure I'm giving you. I'll resend it to you. But that's what it is, it's miscellaneous parks throughout, and that's why I just didn't list them by roof and put the number down beside them all.
Okay. She did a very detailed report.
And then the only other thing I didn't see was the Patrick Community Center. I know before we were talking about, how disrepair that is that on here anywhere?
That would have to be a separate, sorry, I'm muted. That would have to be a separate line item that you guys could talk about as far as a project, because years ago, we went out for a master plan. We'd have to go out for a new master plan on Patch Reef and redo the whole thing, but that would be one of the discussions we could have on Monday as far as how we want to allocate the additional money that we have left on projects. Right now, I've checked with city staff and the building is not leaking. And it's functioning. Of course, nobody's been inside it except for staff because it hasn't been open to the public for the last few months, but it is not leaking right now.
But it did repair, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes, Madam Chairman, so I'm looking at the timeline of the budget. Is it, this coming fiscal year, where we have the $5 million for the golf course design and construction?
That's what we had done in that projected budget that we did I think it was January, but it feels like 20 years ago right now. Yes.
That's the next fiscal year, expire September 2021, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and just looking at the items that Melissa talked about, I did ask a question. I talked to Rita about some of this. It seemed like every year we had IT upgrades needs in 6-figure range. It's listed out here, but I suppose that Melissa's talked to the city about that. And I know that there's software and equipment is constantly changing to stay ahead of the hackers, but it just seemed to me at some point, we should be at a point where we have preventive maintenance, so we don't have to keep spending that amount of money. Can you comment on that, Melissa?
Let her unmute, she'll talk.
Yeah, Bob, that number, the 169.1 there, and again, I took that off of last year's request from the city, but that also includes, just so you know, I think it's $80,000 this upcoming year to address security at the parks, and that's where they're budgeting it in, because their IT department is working with the security in order to come up with that. I actually have a meeting this coming Tuesday to go over the phase-in plan for that. So we're moving forward with a security plan for the parks, and that there is money allocated for that in the IT upgrades needs.
Difficult to hear what Melissa said. I don't know whether it's just on my end, but
I would,
Going,
Okay.
just looking at my end.
Can you guys hear me?
I can try to turn mine up some.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is that better? Can you hear me better?
You're echoey.
Can you hear me better now?
Okay, let me just tell them. 80,000 of that money that's set aside for the next fiscal year and the next couple of fiscal years, 80,000 is for park security. And Melissa has a meeting coming up next week to kind of go over the phasing plan for how they're gonna implement security features through the IT department in the parks.
A couple other questions that I had, batting cages this year, St. Park. Did we just do, last year was just cash.
Just come over here and talk. Just a second. She's gonna come use my computer.
Okay, first, the batting cages, when we talked about those, year before last, we had decided to phase them in and do it over 3 years. So again, that's a project you can decide to move for. Any of these, this is just simply a working document of things that I knew that we had discussed before. So obviously, you guys can make any adjustments you want, and, you know, this time next year, I might not even recommend the same things that are on there. So this is simply recommendations where I took this project and took the money that Brienne had set aside based on the phasing in plan of the golf tournament and kind of, the golf course, and kind of worked in where things could fit, and then based on safety, et cetera, the things that I outlined. So for the batting cages, we had completed the quad field batting cages at Sugar Sand Park year before last. This year, we moved over and did the Patch Reef Park batting cages. And the plan for next year, originally when we went through this process, but it can be adjusted, was to do the dual fields at Sugar Sand Park for the upcoming year. So that's the batting cage. The boardwalk and beach crossover, Bob, honestly, that's a placeholder right now. I've talked to Greg. The problem they're having is some of that boardwalk that was redone before, there's a traction problem because of the salt air, and it's wearing on those boards more, and it's causing a slip. So they've gone back and they've tried to put some non-slip paint on there to try to solve that problem. So there are some sections that we'll get more information on that next week, and you can ask more in-depth questions.
Well, I guess I just wondered, because I know we
Yeah, like Pollywood or,
slippery.
yes.
I think that was the question. And just looking forward, and be prepared for this answer when we, next year, is that I'm just curious about what our ILA fund is requires us to do as far as the track. And I didn't realize that we were obligated to service the track. Just something I'd like to know before next year. And then that can be a meeting, let's see this coming on that.
Absolutely, I'll take a look. I will let you know that that has come in as a request. So I just have it there as a holder, but they have requested that. That does not mean we're obligated. I will absolutely do that research for you.
Well, I would, their request, I would also suggest that given the activity over there on campus, that they consider $5,000.
Absolutely.
Down at, Bernie over there, and that Bunker Middle, and that's a lot of extra activity, and I think that there should be room there, sales tax, for construction, coupled with the track.
Yes, sir.
I think that, cover it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ernst?
Madam Chair, thank you. As I look at the schedule, I guess a couple things. One is, I think, we'll know more as that. I'm also very sensitive to whatever we're going to set aside military nice to have, I would probably push them off a little bit, only because, I think we have to look at what are we actually gonna set our millage rate, what is the city? And I think we don't wanna do it by ourselves, we need a little bit of thought process with them. And the big thought process is line items that are not on this list, the Cumberland Tower, as well as golf course. So on the golf course front, what I watched the city council's meeting related to the wildfire, and frankly, I was quite disappointed in the wildfire, as most of the city elected were very disappointed, because it highlighted the fact that park simply isn't a priority. Okay, and I suspect the golf course is not a priority either. And so that, I think we need to have a straight answer of what is a priority from the city and make sure that we're working toward it. And I would tell you, after seeing what's going on with COVID-19, after all the other things that are going on, protests going on there, honestly, they're good discussions, but they also highlight how important our parks are, our beaches are. We need to keep them going and keep investing. And I honestly have no idea where they're going with the golf course. Best, I have one assumption to sell it, but I don't think we're going to get a straight answer from anyone about where we stand with the city for some time. So with that, I would encourage the executive director and yourself, if you'd like to reach out to the city senior leadership group and say, we need to know where they stand. There's no straight answer from them. I'm kind of done. I think we should move forward with the east side and build out the east side as we design. And with the exception being the one thing that we haven't talked about because of COVID, we were scheduled to have a needs assessment. We didn't have that needs assessment. And that needs assessment meeting, if you go back to that, and I asked them, what are the top things? Boil it down. I don't want to hear, all the mechanics of how it is and everything. I just want you to give me 3 things that came out of our community. What do they want? Okay? And the 3 things that came out to me, and probably correct me on this, I apologize to anyone I may be wrong on, but number 1 was more walking trails. Okay, we've talked about that, so I think we should do that. We can do that at Ocean's Grant, we can do that at the golf course. Number 2, dog parks. There's a demand and a need for dog parks. And I've heard it from people out there that, they would like to see them lit, dog parks. Well, I was kind of thinking more about that, thinking, well, we already have lighted baseball fields. Why can't we have a dog park adjacent to one of our lighted fields, lighted park? So there's more lighting, and open something up for our parks. So certainly if Ocean Strand comes forward, I'd like to be a little bit more of a dog-friendly parks. And I think that's something that we can kind of make into the processes. But going back, I think that we need to just go forward with the east side of the golf course, and that would kind of force the issue, whatever happens to the west side. But you know what? Let's just move forward on the east side. And that east side, that is developing the driving range. I would modify that whole driving range. We could have a full walking trail around it. That means putting up some kind of fence protection, along segments of it. I think it is very doable. We should do it. We should accommodate it, as well as over the family-friendly side. And let's do it correctly. I know that we cut out a lot of things to accommodate what the city was looking for, but I do strongly feel that the golf course, the driving range, and the family-friendly short course that we designed need to be lit. So let's do those things correctly. Reserve the hotel site for something at a later date, right? Design, build on these things. Forward on it. So we're done with it. And that should be our number 1 priority. And let's not take on too many things because we don't know how many to do. So this list of things that we have here, I put in kind of that category of A, B, C. A has to be done, so we need to do it. And C, like resurfacing it at the Spanish or the swimming wagon center. I've been over there several times. It's not bad. Yeah, it's nice a year ago. This could go on for another 2 years. Honestly, look what happened to the well pump. They have been readjusting. So,
Let's let Brianne pose the question, and let's see what they come back with. And then we can revisit this, rather than to get the rumor out there that we're throwing in the towel. I don't want the public to think that.
I am not throwing in but let me be clear, I'm not throwing in the towel, I'm saying you're gonna focus on the things that Rollins is always the voice of reason. So I will defer to Commissioner Rollins. I agree with what it's saying to get the answer and come back and we'll make a decision on it. I'm not as tied to what happens out at golf course. All things I've heard, like, there's no reason golf course should not be sold in front of crack, no vessels. So I think it is, and they should be on board with, if they want to have golf, supporting development of golf course on the east and the west. But simply, I just caution you, sometimes things take too long. If we can start with things that we have now.
Thank you, Mr. Ernst. We do have a motion that has been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Joanne, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Could you read the motion just to be sure I understand the motion? Got a little bit of discussion.
Direct, Brianne to go to the city council, for a timeline and approval of design.
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rea.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Joanne. You have another job, Brianne. Okay, as far as the CIP projects, I just have a question for Melissa about the, locker room flooring.
So try
Have there been any complaints about that since you did the hallways? And do you think it's absolutely necessary to do that at the swim and racket club?
Yes, we have had patrons express a concern. You got me muted.
Melissa?
Okay, you got me now? Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. There have been complaints for the locker rooms, or some concerns expressed for in the locker rooms only. So the treatment that we did in the other areas has been fine. It's those higher traffic areas in the locker room where there's more of the water that accumulates.
Okay.
And I will say, Susie, I'm sorry, Susie, we can probably, on that price tag, I put a 20,000 holder in there, but I've gotten some quotes since then that are closer to around 13 for non-slip tile.
Paint,
Non-slip tile.
the geothermal system, would you, explain that to the public, please?
Yes, the geothermal system is the heating system in the pool. And I don't have it here in front of me, but I will get it and send it to you guys. The number of times that we're calling them out to repair that system is going up excessively. And when that system fails, depending on the time of year, but if it fails during a certain time, then the pool becomes, I wouldn't say unswimmable because you got your people that enjoy cold water, but it takes an awful long time to warm up. But what I will send to you, because before I put that on there, is I talked to the current people that come out, Symbiotech, I believe is their name, that comes out and works on the pool geothermal systems right now. And the amount of times they've had to come out has gradually increased, and it's a good number. I want to say it might have been 12 times this past year, almost once a month that they were having to come out to repair it.
Is this the same company that the city uses for Meadows Park Pool?
Yes. Hold on. Let me say I'm not sure on that because I'm not sure they have the same heating system. I know the city is the one that utilized this company to hire them to do our pool for the maintenance for it.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Brianne will have the budget on Monday so that we can continue this discussion. The number 3, the beautification of the golf course. I spoke to our landscaper that we had do a design out there, and she said that
these were ideas that Melissa put together, and she included in her note here, the 4 different options that she has, and then also just a consideration at the end that we, go out for a design build, and I thought I was muted for a second. That we go out for a design build for those 3 corners, just to get some zero-scaping ideas from, companies.
Yeah, so another thing I wanted to add to Brianna's plate, because you don't have enough, is another RFP for a design build for those 3 corners. So I was thinking of doing kind of like a tiered, request from the designers, saying, I don't know what numbers make sense to you guys, but I was thinking 10,000 for each corner, 20,000 for each corner, and 30,000 for each corner, and say, what can you do for these amounts of money on these corners, and kind of make it look cohesive, in terms of, just open space, pedestrian type, areas that people can use, but that can be blended into the golf course design once we get there. And then the other thing that Brianna and I had discussed was that parking lot and the 2 tennis courts that are there, to possibly not include this in the RFP, but taking those out and then include it in the RFP, but not include the demolition of those in the RFP cost, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, White wanted to keep that, surface for, the equipment for the golf course construction, so, we wouldn't want to get rid of that. Steve?
No, I wasn't saying it's weird, no,
Oh, it just lit up.
it just lit up. It's my positive attitude, my personal energy just.
Absolutely.
I did speak to Wayne, and on these 3 corners with the beautification and anything we do, a lot of the things can be used in the golf course. Like, let's say we plant shrubs or different things that don't require a lot of maintenance. Those things can all be incorporated later on in the course, even if they have to be moved around. So there's that.
Just a question regarding, I like the idea of cleaning up those areas. As far as, the way it's set up now, we have the perimeter fixed so that, it's a little more difficult for those 4 corners to get off the golf course. But, I mean, there are ways to meet these between the association, between the buildings, I think, or maybe get off the golf course. And if we, take down those, wood barriers and fences that we have now, make it more attractive, I think we need to keep into consideration that how we're going to protect the, prevent, unauthorized access to the golf course itself, put a hurricane fence or maybe even use, shrubbery to prevent access to the property, like up the, southeast corner, where it is now, that's protected, because the fencing goes on Second Avenue around the Flintmore Road and then back, so that area is totally secure somewhat, to vehicles. And, before we put the last section of fence near where the power lines went through, that was an access point where people were running ATVs and, trail bikes, through there. And I think that whatever we do, we need to take into consideration the cost of, provide a little bit of, area there for, access to the golf course and other vehicles. So people will have to keep calling the police about, folks running down here on our property.
Okay.
Maybe that's something we can include in the RFP as well.
Sure.
I think so, yeah, we should do that,
Yeah.
Erin, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, yeah, well, I wanted to have just a little bit of discussion on numbers in terms of what everybody thought about that, in terms of, seeing if that's a good price, you think, to beautify those corners, and to see what they can do at those different levels of cost.
Brianna, is
So
that
those numbers sound good, you guys are.
Sure. I mean, I think we'll see, the idea is to minimal landscaping is what you're looking for, right? Because they are low numbers, and if we're gonna do anything on the side where we demo the, I guess we're not gonna demo that, but maybe there is somebody out there that can do something with that parking lot to make it look even better. I mean, even if they just painted it and put like an obstacle course for kids that live over there to do, I don't know, but like a lined obstacle course, not elements, but just on the ground. Just thinking.
We need city approval before we do the RFP.
For that side, yes. We need to let them know what we're doing. Like when we wanted to do the pickleball, they were amenable to those things. When we needed to put the fence up, they were amenable to those things. So I guess we could put the RFP together and show them and see if they're good to go with that.
I don't see why they would be, they wouldn't think this is a good idea to make this area look better.
It needs it.
Especially like the fact that Wayne said that some of those elements, would not be like we were put them in there and then destroy them for 2 or 3 years. If it was set up in such a fashion, we could continue to use those, whatever improvement we made, and I think it'd do a lot better if that's doing that money. So I like Aaron's idea of getting, options on different levels of pricing, that seem reasonable to commission. Rather than just, if we get one flat number, we're really opening up the door for somebody to be real creative and be a very expensive project. But if you did it broken down into segments, we're like, want to see what we can do at 10,000 per corner and maybe 20,000 per corner. I think that would be the appropriate way to go.
But if you want to cap it at
Okay,
20,
I'd like to make a motion.
okay.
Go for it.
Make a motion to do a design build RFP, for the 3 corners of intersection of Glenmore Road and Second Avenue, to see what ideas we get back, to do 10,000 for each corner, 20,000, and 30,000 for each corner. And then hopefully you can get that out,
Okay.
we'll see it as soon as possible, and we can get it out and approved by the city.
Second motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes.
Sorry, just to be clear on the elements that you're talking, minimal, zero scaping, not a lot of maintenance, very low key elements.
Yeah, people be able to walk somewhere, spend some time, go home, whatever.
Okay.
Maybe even let dogs go there, yeah? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Joanne, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
Commissioner Evil?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright? Yeah. Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay. Last item on the regular business, the banking RFP, Brianne?
Yes, this is going back a lifetime ago. In October, we put out an RFP for banking services. We did get 3 RFPs back. Everybody was responsive. All were very good companies. I think at this point, just in light of everything that we are going through and all the changes that are happening, and obviously I have a very full plate right now, I'm just going to recommend that we stick with our current bank, which is Northern Trust. That's my recommendation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioners?
We've tried to run with them.
They're very responsive.
Yeah.
Okay. Jen, do we need a motion?
I'd like a motion, Madam Chair, if I could ask, did that motion include a rejection of all the bids that were submitted pursuant to the RFP, just to close the procurement loop, and then to move forward with Northern Trust?
Okay, Commissioners, can I get a motion, please?
I'll
A couple years ago, I'm not sure if everybody remembers, when we were building the swim and racket center, we had the local HOA come to us and talk about putting on a pedestrian gate on the sidewalk that goes into the coach houses. The president of the HOA at Wimbledon has wanted to revisit that subject. In the past, they were looking at a $12,000 gate with electronic access, which means they'd have to pull electricity off the light pole that's there. There would be questions about maintenance and who's going to repair it and those kinds of things. So he asked that I bring this up again to see if there's any interest in us seeing if there's some way we can all work together to get something in place to prevent. They're having issues with people riding motorcycles down that sidewalk and accessing their vehicles and homes in that area, that people that don't live in that area. They're gated communities otherwise, except for this pedestrian access point. So if there's an interest, I can come back and we can get some updated prices, and I'll talk to the HOA about any kind of cost sharing that they're interested in doing, and we can come back and revisit it.
I'm definitely interested.
Okay.
I like to be worked out. I think it would benefit us as well, because if they're riding motorcycles through there, they're riding motorcycles through our property as well.
I'd like to see something though that is not quite as costly, and there are other ways of gating with a lock of some kind, rather than to have electricity and maintenance. I do feel that if we have a gate, it should have a lock of some kind, but definitely $12,000 seems, and that was a couple of years ago, that
Right.
seems a little bit high for a gate.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss some options.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that, you know, the gate could probably be fixed with some kind of manual lock like you see on a religion when you have you punch in the code to get through there, and you can change that code periodically. But I don't think we need to put something in there where it's going to require electricity or not these days, so we do need to, I think we've got obligations to prevent, you know, unauthorized access across our property through there.
Okay. So we'll come back with that.
Madam Chair, or Leanne, one of the other options to consider is, I recall that conversation a year later, I think, about our meetings, and he had a good suggestion, just asked our staff, he said, you know those cylinders,
They put-
pipes that they put in the ground?
They did that, and they're still getting back there. Yeah.
We're still getting back there?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, no. Listen to the homeowners association. It's,
Okay. Last week we had another follow-up meeting with the needs assessment group, with Michael and Michelle, myself, and the group to go over the needs assessment, because that is something that was intended to be finalized by now and have a joint meeting with you and council. So we're working on just finishing that report. It was obviously delayed by some of the closures and the things that have been happening, but it is close to coming out, and then we'll have to look at, as things progress, how we can all meet to review that information and get it out to the public too. The pipes and pumping project went out to bid, and they're expecting those bids back in July. We're waiting to get a copy of those bid specs. We have not received them yet, but we did request them from the city just so we can also see them ahead of time, and we'll have a look at them. Spoke with the director of the Friends, John Holloway. We're still waiting to get the executed MOU back from them, but he's reviewing it and should get back to us hopefully this week. We have a conference call scheduled tomorrow at 1 o'clock with the city to discuss the timeline of the project, so hopefully we'll have some updates on where that design is, and probably I'm hoping to get a project schedule from the project manager, and we'll have a better idea of when we can expect to be seeing tower finished. Word is, and Jake can chime in here, virtual meetings are expected to end at the end of June, so we'll likely have to go back to live meetings in July. Is that right, Jake? Not that we're not all alive right now, but I mean alive in person meetings. So we're gonna set up some meetings with the city staff at the theater, and we'll look at a plan for that and get ready for July, going back to meeting in person. And then we have the Fieldhouse Bleachers project that's been going on while the facility's been closed. That's expected to be done by July 17th. So just a quick update on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Brianna, that was very good. Mr. Council, Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one just quick about to the board. You may recall last month, the board approved a declaration of restrictive covenants for Ocean Strand regarding some future
it's nonprofit, because it's out of business or anything. But at the same token, we entered an agreement with FAU, they use FAU for the old board. We are a state tax. We have nothing to do with being out on those fields, other than paying almost $3 million over the next 10 years. I'm happy to pay that for any volunteer that wants to do those kind of things for the community. It is really a less than vigilant volunteer crowd that run our youth sports to support them. So, I think we can work something out. I think it does, think about it at the time when we're on a bigger issue to play or other things going on. And then the whole COVID-19. But the conversation should really be driven by our legal counsel. So I'd like to not be my attorney. I'd like to let them do their job, protect our interests. At the same token, this district is just a tax. We are not here to pursue risk, reliability, something that tragically happened. So I expect that the city agreement to protect us, and maybe that's good enough. And then do something in the FAU agreement that is not putting too unfair burden on. We'll go back to FAU. Hey, look, our goal is to try to make it easy for everyone, not to make it difficult. A little bit more information, I think, this thing buttoned up.
Can I say one thing? There was really nothing that I saw in the video agreement that was created a problem for us. It was pretty close to what we had recently on Anderson and insurance. I don't think that they're the issue. I mean, there's some side other issues dealing with safety that was addressed by some of our experience. But I think in the risk transfer, if you want to transfer the risk to someone, and that's what these whole harvests are doing. Bear in mind, we do have a sovereign immunity, but placeholders, whether it's Sabre or any other new sports groups or jets, they all have insurance, which would be the first call. But as I said, there's no all risk liability insurance policies. It's going to cover any and all risk. It's going to be belt and suspenders. It's going to give you good protection. And I haven't seen any weird claims that would have gone beyond our insurance coverages that these sports programs carry. Not that you're covered with sports programs. But I think that we can take a more global look at this whole harvest agreement and try to give the sports groups a little more protection out of the program.
I agree.
Thank you. Do you have anything else, Mr. Ernest? Mrs. Wright?
I have nothing except for I 1000% agree with what Bob said. He always words everything so well, so much better than I could ever. So yes, agree with that. And that's it.
I do have a few little things. I have a question for Melissa. Do we have clearance in the right of way for the golf course? I know that was a problem. There were some vehicles there.
Yeah, I'm muted.
You're muted.
When I drove by there today, he had a vehicle parked in there. It was a vehicle that he uses and drives around. I have talked to city code enforcement, and they're driving by periodically and checking for me. But is that driveway consistently open with nothing in it? No. Can you consistently drive in and drive past it? Yes. The property that he has on there is in the right of way. It's not on our property.
Okay, thank you. I did ask document that he sent to the Attorney General about the convey issue, and it is still in the queue, so I had some inquiries from the public, and I just wanted them to know that we haven't forgotten that. I have a question for Brianne and Melissa. The sunscreen dispensers, are those motion detected, or are those, you have to press a button?
Good question, I don't know. I'm muted.
You're muted.
All right, can you hear me? Okay. You know what, honestly, Susie, I don't remember. I was over there the day they put them up and I put my hands under there and used it. I want to say they're automatic, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
I'm just concerned about disinfecting, if they're regularly disinfected, if they are not motion detected. So if you would look into that, Melissa, I'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely, and I will just real quick so that you guys know, we did, only week before last, the reason why we don't have the other two sunscreen dispensers right now is out of our hands. There was a changeover at the Melanoma Foundation, and, Lauren is having to go back and prove to them that she has paid for the other three. So I am simply waiting on them to work that out in order for us to get the other three delivered. I've told them that we're ready to take delivery and ready to put them in place whenever they have them.
Thank you. It was brought up to me that the staff doesn't have anything about performance reviews, in place. Jacob, do we need some kind of policy about that, so we, whoever does the performance review has someone in the meeting with staff, or how is that usually handled with, other municipalities?
The answer is it depends. Typically, it's a function of the HR personnel department. They're obviously a very small operation. We don't have full scope of threat. The only direct report, well, I should say, this board has two direct reports. You have your executive director and you have your general counsel. The other two staff members theoretically report to your executive director. So the process, and I'm not mistaken, I actually think that as part of this agreement provides for an annual review. I have to check on that. I do seem to recall that provision in there.
Mine doesn't.
There's not a mechanism or a process or a form that would provide for that review that we can certainly create one if there are out there. A lot of them fall under a personnel manual, and then we've talked about having a personnel manual over the years to memorialize some of those things. But if the board wants to discuss some process to review those employees that you report to the board, we can certainly have that discussion. But again, if there are some options and some resources we can share, which may provide some kind of model and kind of assistance in that process.
It is a new problem.
One question. I thought, so I'm confused because Jacob said that the two employees report to Brianne, but is that how it's laid out? Because I think the employees report directly to us, right?
I would confirm that if I'm mistaken. Again, and Brianne can correct me if I'm wrong. I was under the impression that the general counsel and the executive director report to the board, with the other employees reporting to the executive director.
It was never clarified, and a lot of the employee manual itself, uses the term district and then uses the term executive director, and for a lot of the employee stuff, it's left up to the district. It's not said, like, any kind of employee issues or things like that are left up to the district to decide. So it's not really clear, and the employee manual talks about an evaluation process, but we've never adopted one. We don't have, a lot of the things that the employee handbook covers, there's no actual written policies that kind of go over the step-by-step of it.
Ultimately, the board controls the process for reviewing its employees. So again, this may be an item for a future agenda to discuss how the board wants to go about implementing that process.
That's a good idea. Yes, I heard.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that needs to be laid out clearly. And I also think though that it also needs to be clear,
So can we work with legal, or myself work with legal to develop policies and come back, not at the June 15th meeting, because my plate is full right now for that meeting, but maybe a meeting in July or August to start talking about those things? Is that, okay.
It's a good thing just to see what everybody's progress is and.
Agreed. It's important.
It's not directed at anyone, but it's just something that I just thought might be put in place.
I think it should be made clear, by nature of the title, the executive director is the person who's the titular head for the organization, always, and giving direction to employees. You probably not Brianne as executive director, so, I'm not calling up Joanne, that's what we're going to do something, and person over here. Got, the organization should be managed and, directed by the executive director.
Madam Chair, if I may, just very briefly,
Please.
it's not in our charter. Many special district charters and just about every municipal charter has what's called a non-interference provision, which essentially tells the elected body that its direct line of communication is with the executive director, with the city manager, or with those charter officers who report to the elected body, the city attorney, sometimes it's the finance director, sometimes it's the city clerk. All other direction, all other employees runs through the executive director or the city manager, and the other employees work for that individual. So there's essentially a separation between the policymakers, the elected officials, and the staff. And we're unique in that we're really a very small operation of 3 employees, so it's a little different. But the concept that Commissioner Rollins is describing, where elected officials, board members are not giving direction to employees with the exception of the manager or the executive director, is very common practice in this type of operation by the agency.
I like that concept as well. Okay, good. Well, that's, Brianne, the CRA hearing, did that ever?
Jacob and I have to finish, Merv got it back to all the numbers, we got the city's final report, that came out at the end of May, so, I guess it was actually in April, the months ran together, but we just need to submit our final application, and Jacob and I, we had one meeting, but I think we had so many other things that came up, we didn't ever get to finish that topic, so we'll finish that next week and get it done.
Thank you. Okay. Future agenda items, of course, the budget gave, we addressed, and to the, bracket and the Ocean Strand RFP. And hopefully maybe you'll have some information about joint meeting, if not, first one in July, please.
Can we do the gate for the Swim and Racket Center gate, just because we want to research some options? Can we do that for, instead of Monday, the first meeting in July?